Now, what's interesting about standards is really this, they fall in a life cycle. So one of the things that you really want to do when you're thinking about your standards is think about each piece. Most people, if you have it, let's just pretend you had all your standards, all 4 of those pieces like kind of mixed up. Most people can define them, right? So you've just figured out who the decision makers are, a miracle of miracles, right? You've got it, you've stopped arguing about it, you're writing them down, you're defining them, you're writing them down, you've taken them off the SharePoint instance and put them in the somebody made fun of a wiki. But wikis are great for standards because you can see the audit train of how they got changed and you can cross-link and cross-reference or whatever. So you've disseminated them. You have a program for dissemination. Okay, so we can get a lot of people to that point, right? And you can get a lot of that people to that point. This is where people fall down. Like, how do you make it real? Right? It's one thing to write it down. It's another thing to make the thing real. Right? That's like, how do we get that taxonomy into that content management system and onto the content? Right? So when you define the standard, we also try to get people to actually think about the implementation. Because oftentimes when they think about what they would actually have to do to implement that standard, they realize this is just too hard. And it's better to just not do it. Right? And then come up with a basic guideline than to impose a standard that you actually can't implement. So that's really it. And then this piece is the measurement piece, which is after you actually measure compliance with the standard after it's already out there. Now, hopefully, if you've gone through this process and implemented and you've defined your standards and everyone understands who's in charge of all these things, compliance is high. Right? And measurement is just something easy to do, right? Where you can find outliers instead of some sort of punitive activity. So just think about this and think about this piece as well when you're defining your standard. Because oftentimes the core team might say something like, I'm sorry, the text is messed up on that. It happens when I go from Mac to Windows. Sometimes the core team will really write a standard that's really hard to follow, right? Or really hard to comply with, and they won't actually provide the community, the broader digital team, with the ability to comply with that standard. And if you think about it, it's sort of not fair, right? So you have to really figure out ways to support folks with all of that stuff. So in the end, and this is really kind of anal, this is what you get. Here's your team. You've got them listed across the top, your core team, your dispersed core. It's hard to read. Didn't tell you about dispersed core. If anybody wants to know, I'll tell you. Distributed team, working groups and committee, and extended team, you've listed them. And then those things that we talked about, strategy definition, policy, and standards definition or whatever, are down the left. And you just put an X in. So the next time you have a project, even though I hate the word project, and you're like, wow, we have to make a decision about the way this page is going to look. Instead of thinking because you're leading the project that you get to decide that, you go over here and, well, wow, who makes decisions about design and editorial standards? Maybe I ought to go check with them. Or maybe they wrote it down and it's disseminated, right?